Welcome to Women of the World, a show which gives a voice to women from around the world who have chosen to make the United States their home. Our show believes in the principles written on and enshrined by the Statue of Liberty. Here's today's moderator, Ann McKenna.
Hello viewers, my name is Ann McKenna. I am the moderator today, and I have the pleasure to introduce to you two powerful women that are impacting our communities. They are our guests to the studio, but first I would like to take the pleasure to introduce my co-hosts to the show. Starting with Nandia Jordana. Hi Nandia.
Hi Ann, I'm happy to be here with you today.
It's good to see you. Welcome. And next is Dawn Tomlinson. Hi Dawn.
Hello, I'm so excited about today's show.
And now I have the honor to introduce to you our two guests to the show, starting with Ebony and Adedayo. Hi Ebony.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And next is Elder Semerit Strachen.
Hello, Anne. It's such a pleasure to be welcomed into Conversations That Matter.
Thank you for making time and coming to speak with us. So we are going to start with Ebony. Ebony, would you please tell us a little bit about what you consider to be your immigration story?
Sure. So my name is Ebony Adedayo, and I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was born in 1983 to parents who were originally from Tennessee and Schenectady, New York. My ancestors are actually descendants of Africans who were enslaved. And as many of you may know, this year commemorates the 400-year commemoration of chattel slavery. And so for me, my immigration story is really about forced separation from land, language, culture, identity, religion, and people. Many African Americans don't consider ourselves immigrants because we didn't have an opportunity to choose to be here. And so for us, for me included, that story is about continuing to find a way of belonging and identity making in a land that doesn't always feel like our own.
Tell us, what are you doing to do that and to help others find that voice?
So one of the things that I'm doing currently is I'm the founder of the Kinky Curly Theological Collective. That's a space that I started for Black and African women back in 2017 out of my own desire to find a space to belong. I am a Christian minister and have been licensed since 2012, went to undergrad for pastoral studies, and then went to seminary at Bethel Seminary, actually here in Arden Hills, between 2006 to 2010 to do ministry work. And even after years of being credentialed and having all these licensures, I still found a struggle and just a hard time to belong in ministry. In church, in many churches and platforms that even were talking about social justice, I was either ostracized because I was Black or ostracized because I was a woman, and sometimes because I was both, sometimes because I just didn't fit in. And so for me, creating the Kinky Curly Theological Collective was about creating that space of belonging, saying that I'm actually defining the terms. I'm not asking to be at someone else's table. I'm gonna make my own table and make it big enough and broad enough that other Black women and African women could join and be a part of it. And for me, even though I am a descendant of Africans who were enslaved, I'm really intentional about making sure that that table includes all women of African ascent. For me, I am in a marriage where my husband is Nigerian, and so my children are African American and Nigerian. Many of my friends are African and African American, and there's this misnomer that we don't get along, and I believe that that's a big lie. And I want to create that space where we're creating a sense of belonging for all of us. And so I've been doing that since 2017. Last year, we had a lot of writing workshops where we were able to begin to articulate what our identity meant for us, what spirituality meant for us, what belonging meant for us.
Right.
And we're continuing to do that work in 2019.
Do you have, I'm sure your collective is a young collective, but do you have people that are coming into this collective that are helping you with with all of these exciting things that you're doing?
And so, yes, one of the things that I was really blessed to be a part of in 2017 and 2019, no, 2017 and 2018, was what was called the Change Network of Minnesota. And right after I launched the Kinky Curly Theological Collective, I found out about this really great opportunity to be mentored, to do some self-study, to have elders and champions supporting what I was doing, and to also receive funds to really get this work off the ground. And so I applied to that fellowship and started in October 2017. And for the next year, had an opportunity to sit with some really amazing elders, including Elder Semerit, including mentors, including people from my church, and other women that I was bringing along, and other Black men too, bringing along to help me carve out space for what the idea that was unfolding inside of me. And so this was a work that I did in partnership with other people, in partnership with so many different elders, in partnership with other women who are asking some of the same sorts of questions that I'm asking. And so that was some of I think the direct support that I had, but I was also at the same time doing a lot of reading from Black women, especially from womanist theologians who were also asking some of the same questions that I was asking. It was really gratifying to me to read theologian Mercy Amba Oduyoye, who's a Ghanaian theologian and who's from Ghana and who grew up in a different environment than I did, but is asking some of the same questions, coming to some of the same assumptions that I'm coming to, and she's all the way across the world. And I find that anytime I read a Black woman writer, whether she's African American or from the diaspora somewhere, that I'm having those same sorts of connections and assumptions. And so I felt like I've been supported all around, and it's really gratifying.
So I'm hearing that you, instead of trying to belong to someone else's table, you're creating your own. And as you're doing that and creating that, do you feel there's a timeliness that just aligns with a lot of people as you're doing this, as you're moving forward?
Absolutely. I think, as I said, I am a Christian minister. I've been so since 2012.
Right.
I think a lot of Black women, including myself, are asking questions about the church and are challenging some of the assumptions that we grew up with. And so there's a questioning, a wondering around religion and spirituality, and how we continue to show up if we continue to show up in those spaces. And so for me, this was a space for me to create where Black women could come regardless of their faith expression. And so it's not just a Christian space, it's a space where whatever faith you espouse, whatever spirituality you espouse, as long as you're a Black woman, you have a space to belong here. And I feel that a lot of Black women, a lot of African women are asking in that same space. And so there's a timeliness, there's an urgency almost, because there's a sense of exhaustion, I think, with some of these paradigms that we were been used to. I think the biggest turning point for me was the election in 2016. One of the things I witnessed is that, and it wasn't that I was naive about this, it was just right in my face. So many evangelical Christians supported the person who's in office right now and hid behind the notions of anti-abortion and anti-homosexuality, things that I don't support, but those are the things that they hid behind because they thought that that was the Christian agenda. And for me, that was so disheartening that it wasn't necessarily a crisis of faith, but it really challenged my assumptions about the Christianity that I've espoused all this time. And I find that other Black women have been in that same space, that we don't want to keep being a part of something that has been so detrimental to our health. I want to create something that is a life force and that is liberating instead.
Was it a catalyst for you to be pushed to do it because it was so in your face and so prominent?
Yep, it was. It was definitely. It was, I can't hide behind this. Like, I have to, I can't do the dance that I was doing before where I'm a Christian, but I'm woke. I'm Christian, but I'm conscious. It was like, I'm Christian and this is garbage. And I had to really force myself to ask questions about so many different things. And I'm still asking those questions.
So what are you doing in school? you are back to do your doctorate.
Yes, and so in school, one thing I do is I thank God for the opportunity of the Change Network. The Change Network helped me, for the first time, do a cultural self-study, learn about ancient Egypt and commit my relationship to it, deepen my sense of spirituality, ask questions about what it is to be African, what does Afrocentricity mean. So when I got to school and I said that I want to study womanist theology and spirituality, I began to bring some of the learnings that I learned from my time with the Change Network of Minnesota into my studies. And so one of the things I'm really focusing on is the intersection of Black women identity, an African way of being, and spirituality. So I'm continuing to study the things that I learned in the Change Network.
That's amazing.
It is.
The other thing that sparked my curiosity is the title for your organization.
Okay.
The Kinky. How did you come up with that?
So Kinky Curly is a brand. Is actually a brand for women, for Black women's hair, and so I've been natural since 2007. And so I stopped perming my hair in 2007, and soon after that stumbled across this brand called the Kinky Curly that's about just maintaining healthy hair for Black women. And so when I was looking for a space for us, I'm like, well, what do I call it? And the name of the brand automatically came to me, and because I wanted to be clear that it was for Black women, that there needs to be other spaces where we're building solidarity across racial and ethnic lines, but that this was for Black women. So I wanted that to be clear in the title.
I think it does it in a fun way.
Exactly. And I also wanted it to be clear that we're unapologetically addressing theology and spirituality. And sometimes that makes people uneasy, but that's also my practice. My practice is theology, my practice is spirituality, and there are other lanes for other people to exist in, but this is mine. And so I wanted to be clear that we're unapologetically Black, we're unapologetically kinky, and unapologetically theologians, not within a particular faith expression, but based on our own experience, our understanding of the world, and our own identity. We are putting forth a theology that makes sense for us, and that's enough. Regardless of education or background, we are enough to do theology. We are enough to practice spirituality and break out of other people's boxes.
Well, thank you so much, especially for empowering Black women, because that's needed. It's definitely really needed. Now, with the time we have, I wish we had more time in the studio, but I would like to give some time to Elder Semerit. Please welcome.
Thank
and
you.
If you would please start sharing with us your immigration story.
Yes, thank you, Anne, and thank you, Ebony. What enthusiasm! And I remember reading Kinky Curly Theological Collective and saying, how could we resist that? My immigration story, thank you, Anne, for asking. I was born on the island of, we call our island Haiti, even though the rest of the world says Haiti. So I was born on Haiti, and it's a country that has an amazing pride and history, especially of being the second independent nation in the Americas after the United States. So in 1804 was Haitian independence, and the first Black nation in the Americas. So there's a vibrant country that I grew up in and had my childhood in. And then in 1963, my parents were taken as political prisoners. Interestingly enough, my parents had, championed or campaigned for Duvalier, who then became first the president, but then a dictator. And my parents were political prisoners and then exiled, and they couldn't take their children. And so that's a very big wound that's also part of my immigration story. There were several months before we could then join my parents. We were, as a family, illegal aliens for a while. And so there's that part, the trauma of losing my parents, in a sense, in a temporary way, but the trauma of being separated from them, the trauma of a cultural shock of coming into the United States, coming from a black country to early 60s New York City. That's enough, right? But there is also, having grown up in the culture, the language of Haiti, and coming and being introduced to this idea that the worldview I have had is not the only one. And I always will regard that as a gift, that at the ripe age of 11, I knew that there were multiple worldviews.
Wow. And you came to Minnesota?
No, we came to New York City.
But I mean, eventually.
Oh, eventually. There's a lot of years in between. But yes, I came to Minnesota in mid-career, in my medical career. I was a champion always in medicine for the human spirit. And I was trained as a pediatrician because I felt that that was the specialty where we could deal with the human spirit, where we were receiving the potential in a human body and saying, how could we make that become a reality? And there was a lot of pushback. As you know, science is the overwhelming value king and queen of the modern world. And in that scientific view, there is no room for spirit, not within the confines of medical practice. And I came in mid-career to Minnesota because Minnesota had a subspecialty fellowship at the University of Minnesota for something called developmental and behavioral pediatrics, which promised to give me that room and that spaciousness I was looking for the human spirit. In addition to that, the fellowship at the University of Minnesota championed a non-pharmacological approach to that realm, which, you know, it was so important to me. So many things are solved by a pill these days.
So how old were you when you came to United States?
I was 11.
11.
When I first came to the
And you went
States.
to school and became an MD, medical doctor. What was that journey like for you as an immigrant kid going through the school system as a black woman and becoming a doctor? What was the journey like?
There are two pathways and to that journey. The first one is to, there's just so many difficulties, if you can imagine, from one day to the next, waking up in a place where I didn't understand the language. As many immigrant parents, my parents overvalued education. It's like, you've got to go for education. Education is everything. So we were thrown into the sea. You know, you go to school and you'll learn how to speak English. However, as I pointed out, this was early 1960s New York City. So there wasn't just the language. There was the way we looked, the way our hair looked, the way our hair behaved. And all of that was playing out. So it was hard. It was a hard journey. However, because my parents so valued education, that became my ticket. My ticket for belonging, if you will, was to be an overachiever, to be a good student. And I kept excelling and going to the next stage. The epitome of excelling was to go to medical school. And there came a clash because I had my own ideas of what healing and helping somebody become better was, and it did not fit with the greater picture of medical education. So there, I was attempting to excel. I could excel, but I had some real questions about, is this how I want to define health? Is this how I want to help people get better? And that became a very conflict-ridden part of my journey.
At this point, do you blend the two, or did you kind of break away?
From medicine, you mean?
Yes.
This you have to excel, and you can never, ever, ever quit, meant that I stayed in the profession for 40 years. You know, always looking, as I mentioned, I looked for different ways, which is why after 15 years, I then took another fellowship in order to kind of realign. But I always stayed within that structure. And it took some doing and some traumas again, including the death of my mother, and then 2.5 months later the death of my elder brother, to kind of awaken me to both the shortness of life, these opportunities to really do what we came here to do, in order for me to say, well, I think I'm done with this chapter, and retired from that.
So, and you did say something to the effect that you're happily retired.
Yes.
So you're looking forward to another chapter of your life.
Yes.
Would you please share with us what you're planning on doing, what that is about?
Well, there's always an overlap. So in 2014 is when I took some of the doodling and the drawing and kind of this yearning for creativity that I've always had, and that's how actually I brought up our daughter, is through a lot of creativity. And I began to take it seriously and enrolled in online painting journey called Intentional Creativity. And intentional creativity really appealed to me because it's just that. When you have an intention, then what you are painting with that intention is really happening in the other realm and in the quantum field, if you will. And it allowed me to truly create room for the expression of that human spirit that I had been championing all along, but now I could express it in imagery. There was another part.
And you mentioned earlier something about the imagery of Egyptian writing.
Yes.
I just found that so fascinating.
Thank you. So, thank you so much. So, back in 1996 is when I became part of a very active, conscious African community here in the Twin Cities that looks to Egypt as the foundational base for us as African people. The way that Europeans look to Greece as kind of a foundation of European thought, then there's a long history of thinkers who say the African looks to Kemet as the root of African thought. And the big difference is the Kemetic writing, or again, what the Greeks called hieroglyphs, but in the Kemetic language, what the hieroglyphs are called are words of the gods. So it's a channel, and the word is the same as the word channel. So it's a channel for the divine principle, and that comes in a pictorial way. And we differentiate ourselves from people of the logos, who write in a alphabetic way, and we are people whose writing reflects creation. They're all images of the created world.
Oh, I love that so much.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And then you were saying the two of you had talked about that together.
Well, what Ebony is doing is just so profound and courageous in bringing women of African heritage to open up and give voice to a creative way of finding their place in the relationship between human and divine. And I knew from when I met her that I was drawn to that, and that there was a space that needed to be made to discuss the fact that logos, like in theology, the logos was not big enough to take them where I saw that they wanted to go. And so she said, yeah. She said, come on in, and we did a one-day workshop on imagery and how imagery can take you further than the word alone. And imagery is not that we leave out logos, not that we leave out the writing, but the writing needs to be put together with imagery.
Do you do workshops regularly?
I do. I teach both helping women especially, but not exclusively, to dare to come to the canvas. But I also do something called a cosmic smash book, which is helping people make their own journal as a sacred receptacle for these journeys of inquiry and exploration of the inner world. I think that's what I wanted to say before, that with intentional creativity, it's intentional, but it's also much more focused on what is the inner reality that wants to be expressed.
That is amazing. Very powerful information, and definitely from powerful women. I'm so delighted, and we are so delighted that you could come here and talk with us today. Is there somewhere that we can get more information about you both, Ebony? Is there somewhere we can go to look for you and get more information about you?
Sure. So you can go to either my website, ebonyjohanna.com, or kinkycurlytheologicalcollective.com.
Thank you. How about you?
And I am in a state of emergence.
Okay.
And so my website or anything like that is in a state of, I call it destruction and reconstruction. But anybody can get in touch with me through email, semeritstrachen@gmail.com, and also the website of the culturalwellnesscenter.org, where I am a fellow.
You. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Nadia and Dawn, for being with me at the show. And thank you to Ebony and Elder Semerit for coming today. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time at Women of the World show.